Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Leah Moreau for the invitation to speak to you all today. My name is Lyn Wilson. I'm the Digital Documentation Manager at Historic Environment Scotland. And today I'm going to be talking to you about focused applications for the historic environment, how we are delivering digitally. So for anyone that's not aware, Historic Environment Scotland is the public body for Scotland's historic environment. It's our vision that Scotland's historic environment is treasured, understood, shared and enjoyed with pride by everyone. We have 5 priorities to help us achieve this vision. Those are heritage and society. The historic environment makes a real difference to people's lives. Heritage and the environment. The historic environment is looked after, protected and managed for generations to come. Heritage and the economy. The historic environment makes a broader contribution to the economy of Scotland and its people. Heritage and creativity. Historic environment inspires a creative and vibrant Scotland. And heritage in us, that it's cared for and championed by a high performing organisation. And today I'm going to be touching on 2 of these areas, namely heritage and the environment, how we use digital data for conservation purposes, and heritage and creativity, just touching on a couple of examples of how we can use the type of data that I'm going to be talking about in creative ways. We have 336 properties that we look after across Scotland, and currently we have 40% of those digitally documented in 3D that we can use for various different purposes. And we have a range of different sites across Scotland that we look after, everything from carved stone monuments to Edinburgh Castle and everything in between. There's a snapshot on the screen here to give you some examples. We also look after over 38,000 collections objects, which we are also working our way through in terms of digitally documenting them in 3D. And digital technologies and digital ways of working really sits at the heart of our HES corporate ambition, and the application of digital technologies in research, management and stewardship of historic environment assets is at the core of the work that we do. Under normal circumstances, I'm based at the Engine Shed, which is Scotland's Building Conservation Centre in Stirling. And our objectives there are to learn, share and inspire. We want to teach the next generation about how to conserve our built environment. And we do that through a strong focus on traditional skills and traditional materials, heritage science, but also through digital documentation and innovation. And hopefully when we're able to reopen after we return to some sort of normality, I hope you'll be able to come and visit us there. It's free to enter and we're open 6 days a week. And we really use digital innovations there to bring our historic environment to life. So everyone is given an iPad as they come in as a visitor, and that triggers a huge augmented reality map of Scotland with lots of information about our built environment, conservation, the impacts of climate change on our built environment, many different aspects that you can explore and find out about. So what is digital documentation? It's a scientific approach to digitally record objects, sites, structures and entire landscapes in their present condition, and usually in 3D. And the animation that you can see here is what we call a point cloud, a 3D cloud of points created from a laser scanner. So this information generates potentially huge multi-layered data sets, and this has multiple uses and applications. We can take measurements from the 3D data that we collect, we can overlay photos as you can see just now, and we can create really accurate looking and spatially accurate models to help us with our conservation efforts and interpretation and many other things. We've been active in this area since 2001, and it's at the heart of our digital activities in HES. We started our work in this area with a large project called the Scottish 10, which ran from late 2009 to 2014. And this saw us using cutting-edge technologies to create exceptionally accurate 3D digital models of Scotland's as then 5 World Heritage Sites, we have 6 now, and 5 international heritage sites in order to better conserve and manage them. And you can see the range of sites on the screen here that we worked on. So back in 2010, we worked at Mount Rushmore in the USA, and this was our laser scanner suspended over the side of Mount Rushmore. We would do this very differently now. We would use unmanned aerial vehicles or drones with cameras attached to help us very safely and quickly record the surface of the monument in 3D. But I like to show this to emphasize how much the technology has advanced in only 10 years. This was the best way we could do this project at the time, but now it would be very different. And this work featured in National Geographic in 2013. And this is again the point cloud that you can see here, which is the 3D data set that's created by using laser scanners. And a laser scanner is effectively like a very sophisticated form of a surveying total station. But whereas with a total station, you would measure one point in 3D space every measurement, here we measure up to 1 million points every second. So very quickly, we build up a very accurate 3D picture of the site or monument of interest to us. We also worked on the Scottish 10 project on a fantastic site in India, a 1,000-year-old stepwell at Rani Ki Vav, and this shows a part of the site here. And again, this let us capture extraordinary detail on the incredible sculptures that were around this site, such as the one you can see on the screen here. The work that we did on the Scottish 10 project led us on to the Ray project, which is our multi-year project to record all of the monuments and associated collections that I mentioned earlier under the care of Scottish ministers. This is Caerlaverock Castle here. And I'm not going to read out everything that we do here, but this is the range of activities that our teams do within HES, focusing on research, focusing on using the data that we capture for conservation, site management, learning and interpretation and access. Skills and capacity building is also very important to us and supporting the next generation of digital heritage experts. So how do we use the data that we capture for conservation purposes? I'm going to give you some examples of case studies that we've worked on to illustrate the conservation benefits of these digital technologies. The first of which is our response to the disaster situation at the Glasgow School of Art Mackintosh building when it very sadly caught fire for the first time in 2014. So this, I'm sure you'll all remember, was the sad scene on the 23rd of May in 2014. And this one day afterwards from the famous library in the Mackintosh building. We were able to access the site with the fire service the day after the fire. And this is one of our laser scanners undertaking as much documentation of what was left of the building as possible. We had 2 people, myself and a colleague, going around as much of the building as it was safe to access. And this is what we were able to capture in 2014, both externally and internally. And you're able to see the fire damage, particularly in the roof areas here. This gable was of particular concern to the fire service and building control. And it was thought that there had been considerable movement in the gable here. So what we were able to do, based on an earlier scan from 2008 that we had of the external areas of this facade. We were able in specialist software to do a quantitative comparison of pre-fire and post-fire to assess the level of movement in the gable and to facilitate decision making. So the different boxes that you can see here indicate a different level of movement of each of these individual stones on this part of the facade. So the red boxes indicated movement greater than 2 centimetres, with the orange and then the greens being less than that. So that helped the decision makers to decide that this part of the uppermost part of the gable had to be taken down stone by stone, but that the rest of the facade could stay in place. So what we did was to prepare architectural CAD drawings from the laser scan data to facilitate this stone by stone removal. So we placed numbers on each of these individual stones. These numbers were then transferred onto the stones themselves by one of our Historic Scotland, as we were then, one of our stonemasons. And the stones were then taken down and removed for safekeeping. And it's a very sad story because that part of the gable had just been put back in place with using all of that numbered diagram just before the second fire took hold, sadly. But the data that we captured was also very useful after the first fire for salvage and conservation planning. And you can see here, this is a point cloud snapshot through the building. So it captures everything and it lets you look at this data in ways that you wouldn't be able to using any other means of survey. We were able to calculate the volume of debris in the library to inform a forensic archaeology process. In the specialist software we use, we can very quickly calculate volumes and other measurements. So this then helped the forensic archaeologists to predict how long they would need to undertake the process and to plan for that. Once the building was made safe, we were then able to go in and do a full digital documentation to aid in the restoration programme. And this involved innovative ways of using the laser scanner, such as on a bespoke rig system to document the lift shaft here. And you can see the lift shaft in the building in the green colour here in the centre. And this was one of the only ways that the companies involved in the conservation were able to get really precise measurements on the entire length of the lift shaft. And that helped very, very strongly to create new lifts and new safety procedures and methods to install in the new building. So this is a complete cross-section through the building as it was in 2015. And you can see the level of detail that we can capture. The point cloud can be captured with colour as well, so that we can have a photorealistic representation. And this really lets us look at the building in new and innovative ways and understand the spaces in a building and how they work together. So a really unique tool to help us visualise and understand buildings. And that data was then used to inform the building information modelling development, or BIM. And I'll talk a wee bit more about that just shortly. But that's a process by which we can develop an intelligent 3D model to help us with facility management. Another way that we can use this data for conservation is using the 3D records for stone carving. And I'm going to give a couple of examples here from Duff House in Aberdeenshire and the Four Courts building, which is in Dublin. This is our 3D data of Duff House here. It might look like a photograph, but this is actually a very accurate 3D model of the building that we've created. And our conservation architects were particularly interested in these stone capitals and some of the erosion that was taking place around them. So in 2018, we undertook very high resolution scanning using a process called structured light scanning here, which you can see is a small handheld scanner. In the image in the middle, you can see my colleague Adam undertaking the scanning from a cherry picker. And on the right is the 3D model created from this. So you can see a very high level of detail. This is a very ornate piece of sculpture, and this lets us record at very high resolution. And these are the outputs here. And these drawings can then be used directly as templates for our stone conservators and our stonemasons to then recarve any parts which need to be replaced and conserved. And how we can share that information, and this is where we move to the forecourts building. This is a very similar capital which we have 3D scanned for conservation purposes. And here we have it in a virtual reality environment. So this is what you would see if you had a VR headset on. So you can see all of the undercuts to this really detailed capital. And this really helps our stonemasons to understand how best to go about carving another one of these. And this is a part of it which has been recarved based on 3D prints and based on the virtual reality model. This is Lara on the right, our stone carver, and Al Rollinson, our head of digital innovation, on the left. So I wanted to reference stages and screens, and unfortunately I've not had the pleasure of working on any stages in Aberdeen, but I wanted to include the work that we did on another stage very far from Aberdeen, the Sydney Opera House. So this is work that we undertook as part of the Scottish 10 project back in 2013, and I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the Sydney Opera House. It's a World Heritage Site. It's an icon of modern architecture, and it's just an incredible space. And we were tasked with documenting all of the exterior shells of the building, but also all of the internal concert hall stages and spaces. So we worked with a combination of different approaches to do this because it's an incredibly complex building. We had rigs which we hung our laser scanner off, which you can see in the top left photo here. We worked with an abseil partner who abseiled down the exterior of the shells with our laser scanner, which we controlled remotely. And we had tripod-based laser scanners, which we dotted around the whole of the building, because we have to make sure we have sufficient overlap between scans to give us a really accurate picture of what's going on when we tie all of the individual scans together. So we worked on the main concert hall, was one of the 7 spaces that we worked in here. And you can see this is one setup of the tripod with the laser scanner here. I think we probably did a couple of hundred just in this one space. And that gave us the point clouds, 2 of which of the views you can see on the right hand side here. And you'll see the kind of level of detail that we looked at here. We wanted to capture every single seat in the space and every single aspect of it. And we captured all of this accurate to about 6 millimeters. We also captured, when we do buildings like this, it's not just the main spaces that we look at. These are aerial views of the plant rooms within the Sydney Opera House. And it was important to us to capture everything that we possibly could to get as complete a picture as possible of the building. And this is an image which is almost like an X-ray through the Sydney Opera House. This is a combination of the point clouds from the interior and from the exterior, and you can also see below the surface of the ground in this image into the plant rooms that I just mentioned. So this again, as I mentioned with the Glasgow School of Art, is a really unique way to view a space, view a building, using these digital documentation techniques. And it lets us really understand the geometry and the architectural detail of a space. Our data is being used now to develop a BIM model again, which will support the Sydney Opera House in managing the building and control systems on a day-to-day basis. We also use building information modelling within our own sites as well. So this is at Edinburgh Castle. And I've come back to building information modelling a few times because it is a very important tool, increasingly so with historic buildings, to really understand and support the development and maintenance of historic buildings. So here we've used the laser scan data to develop the 3D point cloud, which we can then take into the building information modelling software. And we do this as well for visualising new interventions at historic sites. And here the purple building is looking at how we might be able to look at developing the cafe at Stirling Castle. And we use virtual reality in lots of different ways in our work. So this is our 3D model of Stirling Castle. And what we can do is work closely with our architects and other planning teams to look and see how a new intervention might look within one of our historic settings. So this is us getting down to the area where we are at the cafe here. So the VR model is a really useful tool for us as well. And this is developed straight from the laser scan data, which we then post-process to give us this solid meshed surface with photos overlain that we can see here. So moving on to creativity then, how do we use this information in creative ways? We come from a very scientific background with the work that we do here. So the work that we do in creativity is often working with partners. But one area where we are quite strong is using the 3D models that we create for accessibility and engagement. And these are some examples that we share on the platform Sketchfab. And if you haven't looked at this before, I would encourage you to go and explore. It's a fantastic free repository to explore 3D models. It's a bit like YouTube for 3D models effectively. We currently have about over 300 models freely accessible to view and manipulate on Sketchfab. And if you're on Twitter, we release a new model every Friday under the hashtag Sketchfab Friday. So it'd be good if you can explore. There is a huge amount of information on there. During lockdown this year, we launched Edinburgh Castle virtual tour on Sketchfab, which is what you can see a bit of an animation of here. And this has proven to be very popular. We've had, well, in 5 months since launch, almost 100,000 page views. And we've written a blog as well about how we did that. So if you're interested in exploring Edinburgh Castle while we're not able to go there in person, then I encourage you again to look at it on Sketchfab. We use 3D printing extensively to support creative expression of our historic architecture and carved details. And again, here we work with partners. So it's last year we worked with Roslyn Chapel to build 3D printed scaled models of some of the most famous columns within the chapel to support blind visitors and those with other visual impairments to have a really tactile experience, to understand better the architectural detail in the chapel when they visit. So 3D printing is a really important way for us to share some of the architectural features we are involved with. And then, given the scope of this conference, I thought it might be interesting to reference projection mapping. And this is something that's used quite a lot now by creative companies. Projection mapping onto buildings, you'll see regularly. And we've worked with a couple of companies to share our 3D laser scan data to support them planning and accurately mapping out how they're going to project onto a building. So this was the Tin Forest, which we worked on in 2014 with the National Theatre of Scotland. And this was a celebration of Glasgow's industrial past and creative future. So here we have laser scans of the cityscape of Glasgow, looking at the industrial heritage there, focusing on the cranes and other shipping heritage. So we were able to 3D laser scan the space to accurately plan the projection mapping, and then project the 3D point clouds and panoramic imagery onto the walls of the building. And the visitors then came in and enjoyed the evening celebration. And then some of our panoramic images also projected onto the space. And we've also worked with double take productions in our own sites at Edinburgh Castle. Some of you might be familiar with the Castle of Light event, which we ran in 2019. This was a 90-minute journey of light, sound and wonder, where guests were treated to dazzling animations and way to see the castle as never seen before. So our 3D laser scan of the castle facade was used to accurately plan some of the projection mapping, and Double Take Productions also used a lot of photographs to create their own 3D models to plan this out further. I should be able to just show a quick clip of this.
Welcome to this Castle of Light. It gives me great pleasure to see you all gathered here. And now, let the festivities begin.
So just some examples of how we can use digital data and digital technologies for conservation and for creativity. And just to sum up, for us, digital documentation is about how to make digital data useful and informative for the understanding, protection, and enjoyment of our historic environment. There has to be strategic thinking for us regarding the use of digital technologies, and there always have to be strong practical applications for the historic environment. It's not just about using technology for technology's sake, it has to be useful. It's really important for us to reuse data sets, so to get multiple uses for the same data set to deliver the value for the money that we invest in capturing this information in the first place. We do a lot of research and innovation to drive the delivery that we do. There are still lots of challenges remaining in terms of upskilling people, looking at funding for how to do this and how to resource the work that we do. A lot of the work we do is about supporting the sector in this as well. And it really is our goal to mainstream and normalise the use of digital technologies in the heritage sector and integrate them where technology has a direct benefit. So that's all from me today. I'm sorry I'm not able to join you live for the conference, but I hope you've had an informative and enjoyable day, and I'll be happy to answer any questions in a follow-up email via the conference organisers. If you're interested in any more information, we have a free short guide on applied digital documentation in the historic environment, which you can download from our Engine Shed website or by scanning the QR code here. And also, you know, come and find us at the Engine Shed. We're always happy to meet people there once we reopen and to talk to you about any projects you have an interest in. Thank you very much.